Exercise set 1.4, Identifying Reliable and Unreliable Premises. From A Workbook for Arguments by Morrow and Weston. The objective of this set is to give you practice recognizing reliable starting points for arguments. The instructions. We're going to go through the sample exercise and all of the odd-numbered exercises from exercise set 1.4. After I present each example, pause the video and rewrite the following arguments in premise and conclusion form, just as we did in exercise set 1.2. Then state whether each premise is reliable and explain why it is or isn't. After each example, I'll give an explanation. For your graded assignment, you'll complete all of the even-numbered exercises from exercise set 1.4. Here's the sample. Computers will soon take over most human tasks. After all, Deep Blue, a computer, beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, in 1997. And if computers can defeat the best human alive in an activity that symbolizes intelligence more than any other, then surely their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. All right. What argument do we draw from this passage? Well, here's how we might formalize it. Deep Blue, a computer, beat the world chess champion in 1997. If computers can beat the best human alive in chess, then their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. So, computers will take over most human tasks. Okay, let's assess these premises. We'll start with premise 1. This is a pretty reliable premise, since it's a widely accepted fact. If the argument were intended for an audience that didn't know about Deep Blue's victory, the author would probably want to point to a news report about the match as a way of supporting the premise with a source. Now as for premise 2, that if computers can beat the best human alive in chess, then their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off, is not very reliable. It's implausible speculation to say that a victory in chess suggests that supremacy in everything else we do is just around the corner. After all, chess is a very different kind of activity from most things that humans do. In addition, something about chess that's true is that when you play chess with someone, in almost every case, the better player wins. Chess is the kind of game where there is basically no luck, and so given that, all we're really saying here when the chess champion loses to the computer is that the computer is better than chess, not that the computers will take over every other kind of activity. Okay, let's move on to exercise 1. Anybody could become a zombie. A relative, a friend, or even a neighbor. Zombies are constantly looking to eat brains of the living. This is why you should always be prepared to escape from or fight back against a zombie attack. Okay, so pause the video and put this argument in premise-conclusion form, and then decide if each premise is reliable or not. All right, let's look at the argument. Premise 1. Anybody could become a zombie. Premise 2. Zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living. And so the conclusion, you should always be prepared to escape from or fight back against a zombie attack. All right, let's assess these premises. All right, premise 1. Anyone could become a zombie. Premise 2. Zombies are constantly looking to eat brains of the living. When we assess these premises, we discover that premise 1 is unreliable because it's a widely known fact that zombies don't exist. So, given this, it's false that anybody could become a zombie, right? And it's also false that zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living, because they don't exist after all. Now, look, I don't know where you stand on zombies, but it's worth pointing out that it's possible to object to any of these responses if you don't agree with them, And that's part of the fun of what we're up to. Let's move on to the next example. 3. Some people scoff at liberal education as a waste of time. But a true education is not just about accumulating knowledge. It's also about educating one's emotions. A liberal arts education exposes students not only to history, science, and math, but also to the literature and art that speaks more directly to our emotions. Thus, a liberal arts education is an essential part of any real education. All right, the argument from this passage. A true education involves accumulating knowledge and educating one's emotions. Premise 2. A liberal arts education exposes students to history, science, math, literature, and the arts. Premise 3. Exposure to literature and the arts speaks directly to our emotions. And so, finally, the conclusion, a liberal arts education is an essential part of any real education. All right, let's assess the premises. As far as it goes, premises 2 and 3 are reliable because they're widely accepted facts. Premise 1, however, is unreliable because of the use of the vague expression, a true education. It makes it too hard to understand what's true, right, or what it is we mean when we say a true education. At the very least, we need to see an argument for the claim that a true education involves accumulating knowledge and educating the emotions. All right, let's move on to exercise 5. Radioactive materials are materials that decay into other materials. For instance, certain isotopes of carbon are radioactive. They decay into different isotopes of carbon. By looking at the ratios of radioactive material to the products of radioactive decay in a piece of rock, we can estimate the age of the rock fairly well. This process is called radiometric dating. Radiometric dating reveals that some large rock formations in the Earth's crust are up to 4 billion years old. Thus, the Earth itself is at least 4 billion years old. All right, so here's the argument. Premise 1. By looking at the ratios of radioactive material to products of radioactive decay in a piece of rock, we can estimate the age of the rock fairly well. Radiometric dating reveals that some large rock formations in the Earth's crust are up to 4 billion years old. So the conclusion, the Earth itself is at least 4 billion years old. Okay, let's assess these premises. Premise 1 is reliable because it's widely known fact that you can estimate the age of a rock by looking at radioactive material in the rock. However, depending on the audience, some readers might not know this, and so it'd be even better if the argument cited a source to support this claim. Premise 2 is unreliable because it's neither widely known nor supported by a source or an argument in this passage. So, we can't be sure whether it's true.